Welcome, class, to week 14. We are almost at the finish line. In this section, we are going to talk about Chapter 16, Schools and Achievement. Specifically, in this section of the lecture slides, we're going to talk about approaches to student learning, and we're going to talk about school accountability. So, of course, we talk about schools, we talk about achievement. We have to figure out how students can learn. And so there are two main approaches to student learning. The first is the constructivist approach. The constructivist approach is something that centers the learner. And the teacher's role is to be a guide for student learning. So, for example, if you are a teacher and you are using this constructivist approach, in preschool, for example, you may have different areas where children are able to play and manipulate items and toys, and therefore children will be able to explore and construct their own knowledge, and they also have to be able to express what they are learning, be able to put to use what they are learning. Something else that is very important in the constructivist approach is collaboration. In regards to collaboration, the collaboration is between students. It's not between students and the teachers. It's between students. So students learn from each other. You may have a child that may know how to work a toy and the other may not. The child that knows how to work the toy may be able to help the child and teach the child how to work a toy and help them construct knowledge about how to use this toy and how to use their hands to construct and make different things. The other approach is the direct instruction approach, and in the United States, this approach is very popular. The goal of the direct instruction approach is for students to have learning time, but it needs to be maximized. So if you are in school for 8 hours, 7 of those 8 hours you should be learning. You should be taking in whatever the teacher is teaching you, and you should be able to make sure that you're able to prove that you understand what the teacher taught. So the direct instruction approach is very teacher centered, and teachers have very high expectations for children. A con of the direct instruction approach is that students often may have a lot of behavioral problems. And teachers may have to spend a huge amount of classroom time, having to deal with behavior problems. So those are the two approaches to learning. And so when we think about students learning, we have to have a record of how children learn and what they are learning. So then that comes into play school accountability. Since the 1990s, the United States government and also the public has sought to increase school accountability. When we say school accountability, that's making sure that, like I said, students are learning and that teachers are actually teaching the material and teaching the material well. One way to do this is through statewide testing. And statewide testing is a huge part of the No Child Left Behind Act. And we're going to watch a couple minutes of a longer movie that talks about No Child Left Behind.
In January of 2002, after decades of empty lip service and political bickering, it seemed for a moment that what had proved impossible might suddenly be possible. Two men, a conservative Republican president and a leader of the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, were ready to put aside their partisan differences for the sake of America's children. America, the world's only remaining superpower, the nation that had put a man on the moon, was finally going to fix education.
And now it's up to you, the local citizens of our great land,
to stand up and demand no child, not one single child in America, is left behind. It was a bold promise, and to make good on that promise, the architects of No Child Left Behind decided to measure every student in the country.
I understand taking tests aren't fun. Too bad. We need to know in America. We need to know whether or not children have got the basic education.
So now it's 8 years later, and we have 4 years left to reach our goal: 100% proficiency in math and reading. In Alabama, only 18% of 8th graders are proficient in math. And next door in Mississippi, it's only 14%. And it's not just southern states. New Jersey, 40%. Connecticut, 35%. New York, 30%. Arizona, 26%. And in California, just 24% of 8th graders are proficient in math. When 8th graders across the country were tested for reading, most scored between 20 and 35% of grade level. The worst scores for reading are in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital.
So as you can see, a big part of No Child Left Behind was the testing. And so that's how they provided accountability in education. The No Child Left Behind, their major focus was on statewide standardized testing. And a huge issue is that the No Child Left Behind Act left it up. It was a national law, but they left the standards up to the states to decide. So every state had a different standard of proficiency for reading and for math. So there was no standardization across the United States. So that's an issue. There is another act that came about in December of 2015, and that is the Every Student Succeeds Act. And that had similar goals. The goal for the EPSY was to make sure that students were proficient on tests and that the graduation rates also increased. The act required states to develop assessments in basic skills. And in order to make sure that schools did this and that states developed these assessments, federal school funding was tied to the assessments, how well the students did on these assessments. There were some positive and some negative things that came from the No Child Left Behind. Some of the positive things that came about was that the No Child Left Behind, that improved student performance, and there were high expectations for all students, not just for some students. And as the test scores possibly rise in schools and school districts, that helped to improve the confidence of the teachers and the students as well. But there was also some criticisms of the No Child Left Behind Act. So when we look at No Child Left Behind, we look at the reading scores, we look at math scores, English scores. When we only look at those scores, that narrows the view of student skills. It emphasizes a one-size-fits-all approach. The test, it doesn't measure things like social skills or the being able to persist during difficult times. It also doesn't measure creativity. And another criticism is that The No Child Left Behind is another way for the government to control education, and teachers can also just teach the test. And so when teachers teach the test, that encourages students to just memorize what's being taught, instead of thinking critically about why the students are even taking tests. The approach to testing is more so, let's just teach the test so we can pass and so we can get funding. So it's very, there are benefits and criticisms to the No Child Left Behind federal law. So here it says, aha, you don't fit the standard. No raise for your teacher next year. So this shows that they may be trying to put students fit students all in one bubble. But students may not all be able to fit in one bubble. All students are, like I said, different, and the test does not measure various things such as creativity and flexible thinking. And then this is another one where it says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb the tree. Well, obviously, a penguin can't climb a tree. An elephant cannot climb the tree. A fish. So that's what they were saying, is that this standardized testing was trying to measure various types of students one way, even though it will only be certain students that will succeed from the No Child Left Behind.